this reading. So I was in Newfoundland this summer, and I saw some of the special ceremonies in the war graves that for the 1st Newfoundland Regiment that had passed away. For the Second World War, the Korean War, and other theater of operations, during the Second World War, Canadians fought in many parts of the world. More than 1 million Canadians served, and sadly, 42,000 died. We also remember those who served in Korea and Canadian merchant ships, including the 516 who made the ultimate sacrifice. And over the past 60 years, more than 125,000 Canadian Forces members have served in peacekeeping operations around the world, and approximately 125 have died. So we remember their service and dedication. And so when you see veterans or members that have their medals, those medals represent time and operations, and that's time away from family and loved ones. So definitely, if you see those veterans, one way or an act of remembrance is to go up and thank them. So there's different types of veterans these days too. We remember other veterans, those that have served more recently. The term veteran also includes those who are on active service in Canada's forces, and anyone who's honorably been released after successfully completing basic training. So no matter what job you want to do, even though I work as a medic, and I carry a jump bag, a first aid bag, I still have to carry a personal weapon or a rifle, and it's in protection of my patient, and that's using the Geneva Conventions and other codes of military conduct. So just like we have a code, in the forces we have a code of discipline as well that we adhere to. So in every soldier, no matter what, again, like whether you're a clerk, a medic, a driver, everyone completes basic training, and those that do and have been honorably discharged after are known as veterans. And whether it's official or not, some serving members of the Canadian Forces are also called veterans, although I don't consider myself a veteran yet. I need a few more white hairs in my beard, I think. But anyways, anyone who served in combat operations in Afghanistan or the Balkans in recent years, for example, is certainly considered a veteran in my eyes. And I have several friends who have been there. So as we finish our combat mission in Afghanistan, where over the past decade we've lost 158 Canadian Forces members, a whole new generation of veterans who needs our support and deserves our recognition. So a lot of people think of veterans as those silver-haired, old, frail gentlemen that have served, but the face of veterans is changing, and we need to recognize that. Another tribute that Canada's veterans, or to Canada's veterans, it must also include, and I mentioned I was going to talk about them again, is that our First Nations and Aboriginal people. So over the past 100 years, hundreds of Aboriginal men and women have volunteered and enlisted in the Canadian Forces, serving with honor and distinction. And more than 500 status Indian servicemen lost their lives on foreign battlefields during the 2 world wars, and many more were injured. So those heroic acts have earned many decorations for bravery, and the Aboriginals today still serve with the Canadian Rangers. And these are the members that I've worked with up north. There's about a group of 4,200 members who serve in communities in 7 provinces and all 3 territories, and most of them are in these remote, isolated areas. You can only get to those places by flying in or taking a boat. There's no roads to these places. They're in communities where they live amongst their tribes or in their communities, but they do protect our sovereignty. They protect our north. So the last part I want to say is just to end with some recent contributions. Today's members of the Canada's full-time regular force, supported by members of the reserve force, have contributed in many ways, both at home and around the world. So in 2011, Canadian Forces personnel helped with the evacuation of thousands of local residents from communities threatened by wildfires in Saskatchewan and Northern Ontario. You guys might remember this on the news. Flooding in Quebec and Manitoba. And there was a plane crash up in Resolute Bay in Nunavut that Canadian Forces members helped with the rescue and recovery efforts. So despite today's challenging global security environment, the Canadian Forces, along with its government partners, continues to represent Canada around the world. So whether it's in Afghanistan, and we've moved to a new phase there with a focus on preparing our Afghan National Security Forces to lead their own security operations by the end of 2014. So along with its federal partners, the Canadian Forces are working hard to secure a future and hope, an opportunity for the people of Afghanistan. You might have heard in the news the country of Libya, where there was also recent unrest. And Canadian forces were there also to help protect civilians from violence. Canada is also engaged in many peace support operations around the world, like the Sudan, the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Middle East, and Haiti. So like Afghanistan, these missions are focused on helping the local people in rebuilding their lives and countries. So I'm going to ask you, how will you remember? How did you remember? Today you guys had a chance to, want to share how you did?
At school, it was that we watched a video, the 3 powerful words. So we had to think of 3 words that can give us peace.
Wow, that's amazing. So what he said, if you didn't hear that at the back, was at school they watched a video. It was probably one that might not have been as Sikhi specific, but they looked for 3 powerful words that were to remind us of peace. That's a really important part, because I know a lot of people, myself included, would like to be unemployed. We don't want to work as soldiers, because I already talked about how it takes time away from family and loved ones. So I think a lot of soldiers in this world, the reason that we're fighting is we're fighting for peace. So that's a really important way of sharing. I know at our school, we laid some wreaths. We definitely read some poems, one of them being in Flanders Fields. And so Canadians have a proud and strong military legacy. Around the world and at home, Canada, the members of the Canadian Forces have served with distinction, protecting Canadians and contributing to international peace and stability. And we're proud to serve, and I hope you guys are, proud of their service, or our service. So we encourage Canadians like yourselves to remember the past, celebrate today, and commit to the future. Part of the future commitment is remembering. And there are many ways to do that and show your respect, our respect. One of the programs that you can also look up is a Canada Remembers program, which Veterans Affairs Canada encourages Canadians of all ages, especially youth, to learn about the sacrifices and achievements made by Canada's veterans during times of war, conflict, and peace, and to help preserve their legacy for future generations. So imagine that Sandeep Singh, the collector, the historian, hadn't found that medal. Some people think it was, Guru da Kripa, like it was fated that he found that medal, that it fell into his hands. It could have fallen into any other collector's hands, someone that was interested in war medals. And some of the medals have been lost. Some medals actually get erased. They lose their name. The person that specifically owned that medal, they get filed off so they can be sold anonymously to other collectors that want to purchase those things. But we were lucky to find this piece of history and to start telling our own story. It's really important that we document our history and tell our own story so we don't have others telling it for us. So that's that act of remembrance. So one way that you guys are remembering, though, is to wear a poppy. It's the traditional symbol of the fallen. So another is to engage and interact with our veterans, past and present. And they have interesting and often memorable stories to tell. So whether you see a veteran or not wearing medals, definitely say hello. With your parents, ask a few questions and listen to the interesting things they have to say. I think with your parents, you can have a conversation now and you can ask, who served? What's my military connection to, our family history? Maybe there's a military connection that you don't know about. So that might be a really interesting personal research project or something you can extend to your teachers as an independent study unit for some of the older students. And so lastly, you guys, I think you all attended some type of Remembrance Day ceremony on November 11th today. And you can certainly talk to your parents or family, veterans, and I'm available to talk to. Now you know a soldier personally, and I'll certainly be here as many times as I can on Friday nights to help Harmeet Singh, even when he comes back. The other thing you can do is you can show your support to Canadian Forces soldiers who are now deployed overseas. Some people spent Remembrance Day overseas in Afghanistan, and there's websites and you can write letters and that sort of thing. So we remember. I hope we remember that Canada is a great country with many freedoms that others in some parts of the world don't have. And our brave veterans helped make it this way. So this whole week was Veterans Week, and especially today on Remembrance